Hello, my friends. It has been a while. I think the last time that I had posted an episode was over 6 months ago. Definitely more, actually, because it was before I moved to where I'm at. So I have some updates, some beautiful, some more painful, which is also like beautiful in a way, depending on how you look at it. But there's been like a lot of shifts in my personal life that has really taken an impact on my work, what I'm putting out into the world. I'm already getting emotional and this is definitely going to be a more emotional episode for me personally. And I recorded a couple of episodes that I didn't put out that I'm not sure if I'm going to put out or not, just because it hasn't felt like it's fully landed in what I wanted to share in the podcast. But lately I've been feeling a pull to create and to share and to use my words and my voice again. I think my expression comes out in different ways, and sometimes that's written, sometimes that's in video, sometimes that's in audio, sometimes it's in poetry, sometimes it's in shitty art in my journal. But right now I just feel like I kind of need to talk and share about the changes and the lessons that I've gone through, especially lately. So quick update on where I'm at in life. So I moved in June or July, and I moved to Gulfport, and it is a sweet little town that I'm really, really enjoying and really loving being a part of. It feels like home. I feel like I've landed a lot here. It feels very grounding, and I am working full-time as a nanny. He was 2 months when I started, and he's now 10 and a half months, and we are having a blast. It has been really beautiful to experience the really fast-paced changes and growth that happen in the first year of the child, and to just be so intimately involved in a family again is really nice. A lot of the work that I've done as a nanny in the past 4 to 5 years has been with multiple families part-time, and so working full-time with one family gives a lot of space for a lot of trust to build and a lot of connection and a lot of bonding. So it's been really beautiful. I've also started school full-time, so I've been really busy. I'm back in school for psychology, and that has kept me pretty busy. I actually just started my spring semester this week, and I don't know why starting school is when's a good time to record a podcast? Now, not the 1 month I had off of school for break. But now feels right. And so it's just been going with the flow and figuring things out as they come, and taking on the new role as a student. I'm getting my AA. I'm starting from the very beginning because I dropped out when I was, how old was I? 18, 19. I'm 26 now, so it took me a good little bit to come back, and now that I'm back, I'm lucky and I'm grateful for coming back later in life, because I learned a lot of tools and skills as an entrepreneur, and being able to apply that in school is really helpful. Not only as an entrepreneur, but also my relational skills and the way that I'm able to feel confidence in myself, feel really grounded in my abilities, and even when I don't have certain skills or tools, I know that I'm able to acquire them, and so that's been very helpful. And with all of this, with full-time work and full-time school, I haven't made the public announcement on my social media, but that will be coming, that I have closed my business that I had for over a year. It was a short-lived experience, but it was really beautiful. If you'd ever come out, I know a lot of the moms and families of my community listen to my podcast, so I used to host children's entertainment and mindfulness classes, And the purpose was to bring children and families together after COVID, and also to teach deeper relational and mindfulness skills for children and families, and to offer a place for like true play and silliness and fun and expression. And it was really, really beautiful, and I really miss it. But I have had to reprioritize my life and focusing on my education and my career moving forward. It requires me to close my business for now. I don't see it being closed forever, but I don't know when I will be able to offer classes like that again. It may be a while. And so all of these shifts have really brought up a lot of emotions. Some of them aren't as on the surface because I've had time to process them. The move and starting school and even closing my business, there was a very gradual change where I was just expecting, I knew what to expect. I knew something was coming, an end was coming. What I didn't know, and this is where I will absolutely get emotional, what I didn't know this year is that I was going to lose my cat that I had had for 14 years. I got her when she was a kitten, and she's grown up with me, and I just lost her this past month, last month in December 6th, and the time was impeccable. Just this past year has been very momentous for me and monumental. There's just been so many changes and shifts in my life, and I'm trying to do all of this in one take so I don't have to edit. Losing Chloe, her name was Chloe, has been very challenging. I haven't had a lot of experience with physical death. I've had a lot of experience with letting things go and loss and starting over in pretty much every other area of my life. But when it comes to death of a being, of a family member or a pet, I haven't had much experience with it, at least not to the degree of my bond and my connection with Chloe. And I think this is like what I want most of this episode to be about. I don't have like a full plan in here for this episode, but I do want to share what that experience has been like for me, because I have simultaneously felt overwhelming support from my people and community, and simultaneously have felt very alone in the process, even though I'm not, but internally, nobody has had that same connection that Chloe and I specifically had. And so losing her, other people experienced Chloe and got to bond with her and love her, especially in her later years of life. But it was like a piece of my world had left me, and in a way pieces of my identity, being a cat mom and her being so closely tied to me for so many years. And I was a kid when we met, being 13 and meeting a cat who you don't know is gonna affect you so much and change you so much. Oh, thank God, I just happen to have some tissues right here. If you're watching this on YouTube, I apologize. So I didn't know how much she would not only change me, but help to shape me. And she taught me so much about caregiving and loving and selflessness, and there's pieces of me that have regret in like not being able to give her the full potential of what she was deserving of, because I was a kid when I had first got her, so there was only so much financially and emotionally that I could provide for her, because I was still figuring out life and who I was and what that meant, and jumping around from place to place, location to location, and different jobs and different entrepreneurial ventures and traveling and all the things, and pieces of me feel regret, and I think that is normal, and in a way healthy too, to aspire to give so much to our things, or not our things, our beings, but also our things, I guess, depending on how deeply devoted you are to your possessions and life things. And so, like, part of me wanted to make this podcast because I know a lot of people have dealt with loss, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with it. And while I'm feeling so much sadness and so much grief and so much loneliness, you know, my home is not the same without her. My room is not the same without her. I'm very used to her being there. And pieces of me are starting to feel that fade of, like, you know, the first few weeks I would still think that she's there and I'd feel her in my bed, and while that was painful, it was like she was still with me in a way. And now that that's fading, just because time does that and I become more familiar and comfortable in the new normal, that feels very painful. And so while there's that deep, dark stuffness, it feels just like heavy and hard and painful, there's also like this really deep beauty in experiencing this journey, like going through this ceremonious letting go and acceptance. It is, and not, honestly, the process hasn't been as beautiful as I wanted it to be. You know, I knew she was getting older. She was 14, and so it's not that pieces of me hadn't thought about it. I wasn't ready for it. She wasn't sick. She wasn't showing any signs of, you know, being closer to her time, and so it was pretty unexpected for me. But I had thought about her passing in the past couple of years because a piece of me knew that I needed to emotionally prepare for it or I would fall apart. So pieces of me wanted it to be like this really ideal crossing for her, and in ways it was. You know, when she had passed, my boyfriend was luckily here at home with her because he was working out of my home while I was at work, because he didn't have time to drive back home, and so he was here and he was able to help comfort her, and he was so sweet with it. He like put her on a heating pad and was loving on her and petting her, and my roommate was here and she was doing the same, and she, you know, had this really beautiful ceremonious crossing, but I couldn't be a part of it at that time, at least not in the like physical end when she had died. And I got to have my ceremonious time afterwards and giving my gratitude and sending her my blessing, and I saged my room and I opened my windows and I cried with her a lot, and I took her paw prints and got some clippings of hair and said a blessing and prayer for her, and I got to have that piece. But you know, I had dreamed of this ideal crossing over where I got to be a part of it, and she could lay in my lap and I could reassure her that, you know, we would always be bonded and there. And I didn't get that, and I've had to come to terms with that and accept that, you know, that's not how she wanted it to be. And she was a really wise cat. I think she knew when things were time and how to do it. And so there was beauty in all of this, and there still is. There's beauty of her still showing me every day how to really honor her and to remember her. And I think there's a saying that says, like, we don't truly die until we are, like, fully forgotten. And I don't even think that that is fully true. You know, I think that, you know, define death, right? Death, if we define it as an energetic, I don't think any of us, oh, there's the phone. I don't think any of us truly die. I think that we transform into back into what is, and in that way I don't think that any of us will ever be lost. But with that quote, with we're not dead until, like, everyone forgets, it brings me peace, because Chloe will be alive in my lifetime forever, well, my forever, till I pass in this physical realm. And so that brings me peace in knowing, like, her memory is with me, and I'm lucky and grateful to be at a time that we have all of this media where I can capture photos of her and look back on memories and videos of us when we were young and naive and figuring it all out in our first apartment, and in our childhood home, and in the in-between homes that lasted a month or two, and moving into this apartment and living with exes, and death is it's something that we all experience, and it's inevitable, but it doesn't get any easier. And you would think that, like, you know, it being the norm, it would feel easier. And maybe it does feel easier for some people who have an easier time compartmentalizing or masking the emotion or ignoring it. But I think there's really deep value in expressing your grief and not, like, living in it forever, where it is affecting your life and inhibiting you from more connection and joy and all of those things. But I think there is a period that we go through, or waves that we go through, where we just have to be in this grief. And there was a night I had dinner with friends recently, and I was crying about this, and they all gave such beautiful advice, and one of my friends called it love grief, and it's something to be felt and experienced fully, because it's not a matter of the mind, it's a matter of the heart. And the mind tries to make sense of things, or try to talk some logic or reason into things. Like, you know, I was having some processing myself of, like, this is a pet, you know, there's this unspoken societal expectation that pets should only be grieved for a certain amount of time, and that it's silly to grieve them past X amount of time. And so there was a part of me that was like, has it been too much, too long? And I got that advice of, like, there is no timeline for this. And, you know, I've heard that all the time about grief and death, of, like, you know, at unexpected moments you'll think of them and you'll have a really hard time and you'll cry and it'll be like you lost them all over again. But experiencing it is another thing. And yeah, I guess the purpose of this podcast is just to be in my heart. You know, it is called Back to Heart for a reason. And to be in my heart and share my heart with your heart, and that if you are experiencing some kind of loss, which doesn't have to be death in the physical that we define death often to be, loss is so many different things. It's heartbreak, it is losing somebody physically to death, it is changes of life that you have to let go of, moving to a different home. Like, we are having to let go of something that we had bonded with so deeply and loved at a time, and that time is over, and that's sad. It's sad, and it's hard. And so I see you in that, and it is not going to last forever, at least the initial deep shattering grief. I've been speaking to my therapist about a piece, well, pieces actually. She's brought to my awareness concepts that I've already known about, but just needed a reminder on to remember about my life and have like more compassion for myself, because like I said, like I was kind of in this like self-judgment place of like I'm letting this linger too long and all the things that come with judgment. And she brought to my awareness internal family systems, which is a type of therapy, and within this is the concept of parts and our psyche being made up of different pieces of self. And so, you know, when I was younger, I had like this big looming question that I used to journal about all the time, like, who am I? Because I thought that there was one definite final answer to that, and there's not. It's an infinite array of answers, and they change, and they're flowing and shifting. Some pieces last forever, some pieces last a season. And this question is also like really applying to my life now of like, who am I without Chloe, and what am I feeling, and what is all of this? And she reminded me like multiple pieces of me can exist at the same time, even if they're contradictory. You know, I have these pieces of me that want to feel joy and excitement and love and new connection in my life, but I also have sadness and grief, and you know, both of those things existing at the same time sometimes feels unfair to one emotion or one or the other emotion. Like they both feel like they've been I don't know, that something's being taken from them if they're not getting the full spotlight. You know, now that I'm like kind of coming out of like this hole of grief where like everything was just grief, and I couldn't touch any other emotion except for grief. Now that I'm like kind of slowly crawling, at least not like fully, now that I'm like slowly crawling out of that, it's like my grief is like, but wait, where is my spotlight that I've had for so long, and my joy and my anticipation and all of these other emotions that have kind of like taken a back seat to give grief its time that it needed are like, okay, but now we also want to be here, and we also want to come forward, and we also want to experience life. And so my grief has to be like, okay, how do we find a way for both of us to live in here now? And that's mostly just accepting that they both do exist, accepting that the grief is there, but it's not everything, accepting that the heartbreak is there, but it's not all, and it's not all of the love that I have in my life or had in my life, accepting that there are so many pieces of joy in my life and so much love and connection, and just allowing all of these pieces to come in and out as they need and to take up as much space as they need when they need it, but also remembering not to get lost in those things. And by lost, I mean just feeling disconnected from any of your other parts and fully identifying with just one part. I think remembering that we have all of these parts is super important. This is feeling pretty complete, and I'm also getting tired, and I have work and schoolwork tomorrow. So thank you all for being here. I hope that if you are going through loss, that you are able to accept all of the different parts of you that may be existing right now, all of the different emotions that might be coming up, and that you give grief the reverence and the honor that it needs in the moments that it needs it. And I also hope that you don't forget the other parts. I wish you well, and I'll speak to you all soon.